He tried to follow Marquez's line into the last corner, and nobody can do that. Especially into a left-hander, especially in Sachsenring of all tracks. No one can copy your Márquez line into these sort of corners. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Apex to Apex podcast with your host, me, Stanley Jones, where we discuss all things Formula 1 and MotoGP. Now, what you might notice in this episode is, yes, the background's different, everything's kind of different. I changed the room around to make things easier for me to do the podcast, to do the streaming, to do the racing, and just life in general for people here. Everything's easier. Get used to the new background. You see, I've got some matte things in the background. I've got an Alonso thing, some lightsabers, a load of things to prove I am an actual nerd. But we are here. Also, if you've seen this before, you know how I work now. My eyes are not always going to be on you and the camera, because sometimes I look at my screen in front of me, which has all sorts of things on it. Like right now, I'm looking at myself, and I still find that weird. But anyway, because there was no Formula 1 last weekend, thankfully no Formula 1 last weekend, we had the pleasure of MotoGP, which returned to the German Grand Prix at Sachsenring. Now, Márquez was the heavily tipped favourite in Sachsenring. Of course, it was he's won there, I think, 11 times all series with Moto5, Moto2, MotoGP, and he did not disappoint with his favourite title coming into Sachsenring throughout the weekend and after the weekend. So let's get into why Márquez proved to everyone what we already know, that he's the greatest, and then later in the episode we'll discuss why Spa for F1 this weekend, which is the upcoming weekend, is going to be an embarrassment for Formula 1 yet again. Even more of an embarrassment than I found Silverstone. But yes, Marc Márquez, I've said for a long time, in my opinion, the greatest of all time. There's no debate about that. And the weekend at Sachsenring, it showed the greatest at being the greatest. And it also showed the different mindset he's able to take now. Because he wasn't pushing. The scary thing is, if we go in the hand of it, pole position, sprint race win, main race win. That is the easy hand of what happened throughout the weekend. And when I say sprint race win and Sunday race win, it was a controlled sprint race win. He wasn't even sweating when he took the helmet off. And then it was a controlled Sunday win. He was not even under pressure. Yes, some retirements helped throughout the race, but no one would have passed him even if everyone stayed on their bike. And he was unbeatable when it mattered yet again. If we focus on qualifying, for example, where he hasn't had a lot of poles this season, but he decided to run a 3-run strategy in Q2. He didn't run, he saved a set of soft tyres through Friday practice, and everyone kind of wondered why has he done that. Fast forward to Q2, he's done 3 different runs on 3 different pairs of soft tyres, each one faster than everyone else, and of course this weekend was the first one where the grid slots are wider. I think they've gone from 9 metres to 12 metres between each grid slot, or something like that, or the row. I'm not quite sure how that will work, so it's been figured out. But yes, there's a wider gap between slots in the grid, which helped safety-wise. Of course it did. It has also kind of taken away the risk into turn 1 of someone making a move. It is also going to promote at some point more lunges, but there's that argument. But it really does help people on the front row now, especially if you're on pole. And on both races, Saturday sprint, Sunday main race, Marc did get the launch he needed and the lead into turn 1. No one could touch him after that. So after proving his level of tactical intelligence after the 3 run in qualifying, we then fast forward to the sprint race. Now, as I just said, he led into turn 1 in both days, so he leads in turn 1 in the sprint race. He's under pressure by Alex Marquez, his brother, and Fabio Di Giannantonio. Of course, we live stream the sprint race on our Twitch, as we normally do. You can see the handle at the bottom of the screen. It looked to be, Neil Hodgson was saying he looks uncomfortable. I disagreed when I was commentating, because I was like, I just don't think Marc is pushing. I don't think he's trying yet. I think he's holding the gap, because he'd lose, same on Sunday, he'd lose time in the middle sector. If you remember, if you know the Sachsenring track, remember my preview, the middle sector, all these downhill left-handers, which he's quick on, he doesn't need to push on them. He could cruise through them and match the pace for the ones behind him, and he'll lose a bit of that right-hander, that goes down the hill, down the waterfall. And he's been using that for years. He admitted that. He's lost time there over the years, even before his injuries. The last 2 corners, being the penultimate corner with left-hander, and the last corner, an uphill left-hander, is where he'd put a 10.5, 2 temps every lap if he wanted to. And it was just showing how in control he is of what's happening around him. So he achieved the sprint race victory without pushing. Alex Marquez came second, Di Giannantonio third. Good result for both of them as well. They were pushing. I think Di Giannantonio was unfortunate not to get Alex Marquez at the end. I think one more lap and he maybe could have made a move on Digi. The thing is, it was quite a dull weekend. The sprint race was dull, the Sunday race was dull, purely because these bikes are too big for Sachsenring. Thankfully, as again, we know the regulations are changing next year. So the bikes are going to be a little bit smaller, 850cc engines, more tight, more, cornering grip, effectively. Less electronics, more rideability. It's gonna produce more overtaking, more racing. These bikes at a track like Sachsenring are not right for the conditions anymore. It's that hard to overtake. You need to be at least 4 tenths faster a lap to overtake and make the move stick and then pull away. Which in MotoGP is not normally the case. It was the Sachsenring, hence why Marc knew if he leads in turn 1, he can control that pace as he needs to and doesn't need to push. Because if someone came within 2 tenths of him, going into the last 2 corners, he could pull the further 2 tenths and go back to half a second. which for him was completely under control. It was almost like he'd give up time in the middle sectors, as we said, to downhill left-handers, just in case he needed to pull out a gap at the end, which he could do without even trying, which again just sums up Marc Márquez. He's now, I said when he had the big crash in the modern, had the surgery and got the bolt off of his nerve, I said if he can come back in a fit status, every other rider will be, changing their trousers every race weekend, because Marc Márquez will hunt them down. And it's exactly what's happened. He is now third in the standings. He's done 5 races since he returned from his surgery. He's won 3 of them, 3 of the last 4. Of course he won Sachsenring. And now he's fully in that title fight, up to third in the standings. We said 18 points behind the title fight. Fighting for a 10th world title now? When everyone else is fighting for a first or second. There's different levels to the game that Marc Márquez is playing, and no one is on that level. He's a true, complete champion. But he's now got this new mindset of, he knows he doesn't need to push all the time. He'll get the same amount of points for winning by a second as he does winning by 5 seconds. There's no need to push. And it's interesting to see now. MotoGP now goes into its 4-week summer break. And the next race weekend is in Silverstone, which is not primarily one of Marc's strongest tracks, or Ducati's strongest track, weirdly enough. So it's interesting to see if he'll able to have this new mindset he's got, and he's learned over the years of his injuries, that you need the Alain Prost mindset of a way where if he can win and push, Marc Márquez is going to win and going to push and try and win. But if it's a weekend where he knows pushing like that is just an extra risk to his body, and he knows finishing 4th or 5th brings him the points he needs, like Silverstone, I think, for example, will be that. Interesting to see if he accepts that now or not, because the previous Márquez before the injuries wouldn't. I think now why he's so complete is he knows now what he needs to do at each race. He said, I think Assen was a defensive weekend where he knew he wouldn't win. He brought him the points. And I believe he said Sachsenring will be an attack weekend where he won every session he competed in. That is Marc Márquez nowadays. That is the complete Márquez. That is a complete world champion we have in MotoGP. Now, of course, it wasn't just Marc Márquez on the track. We will go into the results, what happened behind him as he was so in control. But one thing I will add, just before we move on, is it's so rare to see an athlete or a racer or a rider be in such firm control at the very peak of the level they're on, the very peak of the sport they're in. And when you watch that, yes, again, it was a dull race, it was a dull sprint race, it was a dull main race, but you also have to appreciate the level we're talking about of what we're watching Márquez do with effectively one arm on the bike. We know the shoulder and the arm is nowhere near the condition it needs to be for full fitness. He'll never reach full fitness again. Yet he's still able to control a race weekend like that. Sachsenring helped, of course, but then we go back to Brno, go back to Hungary, look at Aragon, which again is going to be favouring him. It's incredible to watch this level of greatness, and I think people are realising now with Mark, and a lot more people are doing it with him now, realising what we're watching, because we're not going to have this forever. And I'm glad about he's being recognised by many as one of the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest. But second place and third place in the Sunday race was once again the Trackhouse Aprilia boys, who again were superb in Ogura in second, Raul Fernandez third. In the sprint race, I think they were 4th and 5th. But Ogura passed Fernandez into turn 1. What I love about Ogura is he has not a lot of riders have it, but he has the mental capacity to have more. So he made the move on Fernandez late on the race into turn 1 for second. And Fernandez tried to kind of lean on him a bit. Some riders do it on the outside, lean on the inside to put more pressure on riding inside. Ogura just shook his head, making the move. While leaning in, going down the gears, making the move. And that's the mental capacity of someone who is in firm control of what he's doing on his job, what he's doing on the bike. And Ogura has really come to the front this season. I read a thing that if take away his breakdown in Austin, he'd probably be leading the championship, which is very true. He would be. I realised he hasn't made a mistake. I can't think of a mistake he's made. Some reports said he hasn't actually made one this year, some analysis. And I didn't even think that if he didn't retire at Kota, he would be leading the championship, because he has been superb this season for most of the races I can remember off the top of my head. But again, it was a second and third, double podium for the Trackhouse boys, a 4th and 5th in the sprint race, more solid points for them. And they've formed a really good team, they've formed a really good package. Of course, the Trackhouse team on the satellite Aprilias, and it's a shame next year that they're losing that. They're going to stay on the Aprilias, but of course Ogura is going to factory Yamaha. I pray the move works for him, but I do fear the future of Yamaha and what Ogura can do on it. But the 850cc might change that up. I won't go too much into that, because I think most podcasts now have said how I fear what Ogura can do at Yamaha, because I just fear Yamaha in general for their level of ability, which is why Quartararo's leaving them. But it's a shame that the Trackhouse team are going to have to go different ways. It hasn't been announced who's going to be on the bikes next year. I think rumours are Fernandez and maybe one more. Maybe from Moto2. I'd like to see Gonzalez get a chance in MotoGP. I think he deserves it. Sounds like he's going World Superbikes though, which is a shame. But again, another strong weekend from the Trackhouse boys, showing they're both firmly in contention for this championship, especially Ogura. Now, something I didn't acknowledge before, and I acknowledged it now when I looked at the head shake and his capacity to do more while he's on the bike. Not a lot of riders have that. I mentioned not many. Obviously, we know Mark has it, Pedro has it, arguably Bagnaia has it, and Ogura clearly is in that category. Ogura really this season has come forward to show he is in the top category of bike races in the world. We knew that anyway, but it's one thing to know you are, and then you have to do it in MotoGP consistently, and he's been doing it all season. Do not rule him out of the championship fight, which is crazy to say on the Trackhouse Aprilia, but he's second place now, only 14 points behind Jorge Martin, who's now leading. You're going to ask, where's Bezzecchi now? Why is Bezzecchi in the top, not in the top three? Because you said Mark was third. We'll get into Bezzecchi soon of what happened to him in his weekend and why he scored another 0 points. But before that, we do have to mention his teammate, because his teammate Jorge Martin is actually leading the championship still. Now, Martin has his people who talk against him, but he's firmly in the championship picture. He's firmly leading it by 14 points to Ogura and then 18 points to Marc Márquez. Now, what Martin did this weekend that impressed me was, one, he kept Pecco Bagnaia behind over the line, and he had Bagnaia on Sunday on his rear wheel literally the entire race. Bagnaia couldn't really make a move. I don't think Bagnaia was also aggressive enough to make a move when he needed to. There was a moment at turn 1 and turn 2 where Bagnaia looked to get confused on the curb and have his foot off the peg, which was weird. But Martin led Bagnaia home in a weekend where the Factory Aprilia team suffered. Bezzecchi didn't race. We'll get into why afterwards, why Bezzecchi didn't race. But again, just like Bruno, they didn't race for a different reason though compared to what happened in Czech Republic. But Martin brought points home in a tricky weekend where winning was not on the cards, a podium was not on the cards, but instead of throwing it down the roads like Martin himself has done plenty of times in recent history, he brought the points home he needed for his championship fight. So I said at least, so Martin currently sits on 208, Ogura's 14 behind as I said, Marc Márquez is now 18 behind as I said. It's amazing how quick the championship has changed the shape in the last few rounds. No one would have predicted Martin to be leading at this point. At halfway point in the season before the summer break starts, it's going to be Jorge Martin on the Aprilia leading, not Bezzecchi. Should be Bezzecchi when you think about it. What's going on with him is the pressure had got to Bezzecchi. It's a shame to see. I did predict it to happen when Mark, as I said, came back from the injury. I said people will run away from him. Bezzecchi was the number one target because he was leading at the time. He was leading the Factory Aprilia team. But his last 5 or 6 races have been dire. What's going to be interesting for Martin, so he came home in 5th. I say led Bagnaia home, he came home in 5th place on Sunday. As Mark increases the pressure and as Mark's fitness gets better, we are going to talk about Mark a lot because he is the shark, he is the danger in the sport, he is the star. He's going to keep increasing the pressure that other riders cannot handle. Martin has shown. We haven't really seen Mark and Martin head to head. We did in Phillip Island 2024 when Mark was on the Gresini and Martin was on Ducati and Martin won the championship that year. Other riders are not handling it, as I predicted. Can Martin? It's going to be the defining pattern of the second half of the season to show which riders can keep up with this pace and pressure from Marc Márquez. In my opinion, I don't think anyone on the planet can keep up with this pressure that Mark is putting on them, hence why they're all crumbling literally to his feet. But Martin did have the champion mentality of picking up the points in a weekend where any point will do. It's a quality you have to learn in racing. Martin, I think, I was interested to see if he would learn it based on what happened last year with his injuries. He definitely showed it this weekend in Sachsenring, that a bad weekend can still bring home points you need. It's better to finish 5th or 6th to bring home the points than go in the fight for the lead and the top 2 and then throw it down the road and walk home with nothing. It's something that Marquez has had to learn with his injuries. Martin now looks like he's grasped that aspect of racing and is accepting that because he got a big round of applause by his Aprilia team when he got back to the box after the race. Bear in mind, they don't really like each other. They do the old nice things on camera. He's been booted out the Aprilia team for a reason. You know, they fell out. But his team and engineers are around him. Obviously, they're on his side. They were very proud of the work he did on Sunday, and I think as he should be as well. Going from Jorge Martin on the Factory Aprilia, now we need to talk about Marco Bezzecchi. What happened to Bezzecchi and why didn't he race on Sunday? And why is he now out of the top 3 and dropped to 4th in the standings? Let's rewind to Saturday morning. Now we know Bezzecchi is on a dreadful run recently. He hasn't scored in the previous 2 or 3 races of that. I think 4 of his last 5 races he's scored 0 points on the Sunday, something along those lines. Saturday morning, he looks okay on Friday, but again, Aprilia were off the pace a little bit. So as fast forward to Saturday morning, he's in qualifying. So let's go to Saturday morning where he's in the practice before qualifying starts, before Q1 starts. He's coming in the middle sector. He's done the first sector, turn 1, 2, 3, 4. He's come down the right, back up the hill on the left hand. He's now coming the first left hander coming back down the hill in the middle sector. He's come off the throttle as you do to let the bike guide around, but the rear wheel's sliding, the rear wheel's gone out for a drift. As soon as he comes off the throttle and it's still going around, at this point he knows he's coming off. The problem is, when he tried to correct it and came a little bit back on throttle, I don't even know if he actually came back on the throttle when it happened. The rear wheel then gripped again, losing the front, slammed him down hard, and it's a big crash at high speed. Was it 90 odd mile an hour at this point? Bear in mind he crashed at 120 mile an hour the race before in Assen, so his body's battered anyway, but he's been slammed down hard. I don't know if he broke his left collarbone, because that's what happened. He broke his left collarbone. If he broke the collarbone on the impact of the track, or if it was again similar to the Márquez crash in Indonesia, where it wasn't the initial impact. As soon as Bezzecchi's body hit the gravel, it flicked up and then the barrel roll started. And there's talk that he did it there as well, which is not good for MotoGP. There's been a couple of riders, Márquez, someone else as well included, and now Marco Bezzecchi, who's had this injury happen, not from the impact on the track. Of course, that didn't help if he didn't do it there. This isn't confirmed if he did it on the initial impact or in the gravel, but the gravel definitely meant him barrel more, because there's a little lip between the tarmac and the gravel trap starting, and with the speed these riders now coming into the gravel, it's throwing their bodies up and ragdolling them, and this is where the injuries are coming. But yes, it's Marco Bezzecchi, Saturday morning, out of the weekend with a broken collarbone. He's fortunate that they're now coming up to the 4-week break, so I expect to see Bezzecchi with what these boys are like. They're mental. I expect him to see him in 4 weeks in Silverstone with the dodgy collarbone and all. But it's a broken collarbone, it's another 0 points, and he's now dropped to 4th in the standings. Bear in mind how he started the season. As I was saying, yes, Bezzecchi we know is on a run of bad results. I think it's 0 points in the last however many races. But yes, a pattern now of crashes and bad luck from Bezzecchi, but a lot of, not just crashes, they're hard crashes, which of course is a mental thing he's got going on. It's a physical problem now he has, and unfortunate circumstances. The mental thing obviously being the pressure of where he was championship leader, with the pressure from other riders, Márquez included. Added now the physical discomfort it was in going into this weekend because of his Aston crash, and then of course we saw in Brno his mental frustration as well. His sport life, his career life has not been ideal for Bezzecchi the last 3 or 4 months. Well, I say 3 or 4 months since Mugello. Really, the last 4 races has been a nightmare for him, where he hasn't scored points, and that's seen him drop to 4th, and now that's seen him get quite a big. I think it's quite a big injury, but it's also a usual injury in a weird way for each one. So he comes into the second half of the standings on the back foot, where he's got to salvage now what he lost from the start of the season. He's got to now be the one pushing, which maybe he'll perform better. He seems to perform better when he's the one attacking rather than the one who's being hunted. There's only one way to see that now. It's going to be the second half of this season. Now, of course, away from the leaders, there are other bikes behind them we will mention. Some of them, Pedro Acosta being one of them. Pedro Acosta finished 4th in the end on Sunday. A hell of a ride from him to finish 4th on that KTM, which we know is a dog and not a very good bike, while the other KTMs are fighting to try and get into the top 10. I think 3 KTMs finished in the top 10 in the end, with Brinda and Bastianini being 9th and 10th around there, but Pedro Acosta did come in with 4th. And, the bike didn't break down, which is a positive, but the politics are really heating up with KTM and the other manufacturers because of the KTM's engine and reliability controversy. Strong 4th for Pedro Acosta. I think, the second half of the season is going to be Acosta just getting where he can. I don't know if he's going to push as hard as he was at the start of the season, purely because his title fight is out the window, because the last 4 or 5 rounds have been a disaster because of their reliability problems. And he's got the factory Ducati contract signed, signed, done, delivered, whatever the saying is. Signed, sealed, delivered, that's the saying. Thank you. I think that's top of my head. But why would you push in the second half of the season on a bike that can quite clearly injure you because of the way it's performing? He had a couple of good overtakes in the sprint race, and I think I can't remember who he overtook for the main race to get into where he was. Of course, he benefited from other retirements that we'll get into later on, like Di Antonio, Alex Márquez, both scored 0. They both dropped the bike early on in the race. So yeah, so really you would have been sick from the road maybe, but they dropped it. He didn't. He came home in 4th. Solid from Pedro Acosta. It's also why Factory Ducati have signed him. The controversy now and the politics are heating up because KTM have revealed that they've found the fault in their engine. They're big reliability problems that are causing dangerous crashes really, and is putting their riders and the riders around them in danger. And I say every time we're streaming, I would not want to be following a KTM on any track because you never know when that bike's going to cut out. They've found the fault in their engine. The problem is they need to open their engine to prove the fault and fix it, which is against regulations as the engines are sealed. The problem is now, and another problem is the manufacturers who are their rivals hasn't said what ones yet, which is interesting, that they've rejected that opportunity for KTM to break regulation and get away with it and fix this fault, which I don't agree with that rejection. I think it's put in this problem with the KTM engines and their reliability is a safety concern. We've seen what happened with Alex Márquez and Pedro Acosta in Catalonia, when Alex Márquez had this massive off and was very lucky to actually survive the off. If he didn't hit the cement wall on the right. It cut out a few weekends after that. It cut out Mugello at Binder all the time. It cuts out every weekend. It cuts out in Brno on the last lap. Lucky no one was behind him at the time. I don't agree with the rejection because it's a safety fault that needs to be looked at. It needs to be proved and it needs to be fixed. The sport, in my opinion, should allow it. It shouldn't be up to the manufacturers to fix a safety fault. There should be measurements where people are there and they can see they're not actually improving performance. Like, there's no performance gain from this. It's purely reliability focused. Yes, you could argue that also in turn is a performance upgrade, but at the same time it's a safety upgrade because every rider that's around a KTM, including the riders on the KTM, is riding a ticking time bomb because you never know when that bike's going to either stop and throw the ones around it off because they're hitting it because they can't avoid it, or going to throw their own riders off, or both, which we've seen before. What does that mean for, Acosta going forward? I just said he's not going to push the second half of the season. He doesn't want to be involved in one of those big incidents with where it's the bike cutting off. The KTM isn't reliable enough to compete for wins anyway, or compete really for the higher points. It's only Pedro Acosta doing that. The other KTM boys aren't managing to do it. It's only Pedro Acosta, so why continue that trend? Their season to me is already written off, because they need to fix this fault, and if they're not allowed to open up the engine and fix it, the way to probably prevent it happening in future races, is lowering the RPM, lowering the power, and that's going to put KTM in the back and back down the order, and Acosta might as well join where the other KTM boys are at the outside of the top 10. So if it's not allowed, I don't agree with the discussion to reject it. I don't agree with the rejections. I think it's greedy. This is motorsport we're talking about, where every team are greedy anyway, so that's not the surprise for me. I think it's risking a lot for the riders around it by not allowing the change to happen. Now, I mentioned the likes of Di Antonio, I mentioned Alex Márquez. They scored 0 points. I'm going to tell you why. Despite finishing second and third in the sprint race, it was crashes that affected both of them in the Sunday race. If we go to Sunday morning in the warm-up, Di Antonio suffered a big off in the downhill left hand underneath the bridge, where it comes back uphill, and banged his head a little bit on the track as well. But before the race, he had a chiropractor doing something with his neck, so he clearly was quite battered and bruised from that crash, which I'm not surprised, the fast one. And I can't remember what lap exactly, but in the first 3-4 laps, he was following the Trackhouse Aprilia up the hill. They went to the left-hander just before the right-hand kink, before the downhill waterfall. They went to the left-hander. You don't normally see crashes here. It's so fast there as well. So you go up the prow of the hill. It looks like to me... Oh, this reminded me quick. I was actually just about to say, you don't really see a lot of overtakes here, but we saw Bagnaia try it on Martin on the inside, surprise him, come at the left-hander, surprise him on the throttle and nick the inside and turn 11, the right-hander. But Bagnaia tried that on Martin in the race. Would have been a hell of a move. But you just saw from the onboard, Martin just cut his front off, went down the hill. Speaking of that, in the sprint race, Martin did pull off what Bagnaia called overtake of the year, where he passed him and I think Quartararo, maybe someone else. It ran the outside of turn 11 going down the hill, did Martin. So Bagnaia himself called that overtake of the year, despite being the one overtaken. And I think Di Antonio was trying the same move. He was really close to the Trackhouse Aprilia, I think it was Ogura at the time, into this left-hander, and he looked like he just tried to openly go wide on the exit on the little squirt of the throttle to get the inside for 11. As soon as he touched that throttle further for that left-hander to go a little bit wider, the front just went from him, and that was Di Antonio gone early on. So competitive in the sprint race, no points on Sunday, cost him points in the championship. He's now dropped to the 4th or 5th in the standings. I think to double check, he might be 5th now because Bezzecchi's 4th. Yeah, he'll be 5th, all because of a really... I say a small crash. He was fine. The bike was ruined because it was a fast corner. He was fine, but just I do believe it was from trying to line that move up, which would have been a hell of an overtake. But it's the first time. I said recently that I think Di Antonio has actually been weirdly consistent this season. This was a blip from him on the Sunday. I don't know if he was too eager or if he was carrying that injury. He tried to, not quite sure what happened. Could have been too eager. He saw Márquez. The problem with these races is you can see Márquez in the lead, controlling it already at the end of lap 2. So he needs to make the move. Then we go to Alex Márquez. Now this may be why Di Antonio tried to push as early as he did. Alex Márquez second in the sprint race, and he was comfortably second in the opening laps in the Sunday race, following his brother. I think the gap was about 6 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths. It would stay there, as we said. Márquez would let Alex get close in the middle sector, go to about 2.5 tenths, 3 tenths, sometimes within 2 tenths. Then they go down the hill, and then the last 2 corners, Mark will just put it back up to 4 tenths down the main straight, and off they go again. It was being controlled, but Alex Márquez had a comfortable second in the race, especially after Di Antonio dropped it. So we go in the early laps, I think the first quarter of the race, we go into the last corner, and Gresini had what I think might be the greatest retro tribute livery of all time. They had if you remember the movie star bikes from the Cato, Gibernau, and then a couple of years later, Marco Melandri era, that nice blue movie star with the fluorescent green/yellow, whatever colour that is. And Gresini ran that, one of my favourite liveries of all time, and Gresini ran that this weekend. Of course, there's no Aldeguer because of injury, so it's only Alex Márquez running that on the Sunday. Gorgeous, gorgeous livery. My favourite throwback tribute livery that MotoGP team has done so far, by a mile my favourite, because it's, as I said, one of my favourite liveries in general. Alex Márquez went into the final corner, and Neil Hodgson believes he tried to follow Mark's line, for whatever reason. I don't know why he tried it this lap. He tried to follow Mark's line into the last corner, and nobody can do that. Especially into a left-hander, especially in Sachsenring of all tracks. No one can copy your Márquez line into these sort of corners. It looked like Alex maybe tried to. It might be wrong, it's just theory. It looks like maybe tried to, or he carried too much speed on entry by looking at whatever Mark was doing. The difference is, instead of losing it on exit, which what Johan Mir did in the race, yes, Mir dropped it again, dropped the front of the bike, his Honda at the exit, but Mir is going Gresini next year, which is interesting. He's not going to be on the Honda. I think it's obvious why he's fell off on over half the race on the Honda. and he's somehow got an upgrade to the Grassini, which is interesting how that's worked out. But anyway, Alex Márquez lost it on entry. As soon as he's leaned in on the brakes, that front has gone for him. It's a slow crash. It's kind of like a sad crash to watch. His arms were in the air like that, complaining on the bike. Or why did that happen before he's even stopped sliding through the tarmac? He didn't even reach the gravel track. That's how slow the crash was. But nevertheless, he dropped it. He tried to do something that is impossible for other people to do apart from Marc Márquez. So 0 points for Alex Márquez, despite a positive sprint race. But there are positives for some riders, like Fabio Quartararo. I said Pedro Acosta gained and benefited from these retirements. Quartararo gained and benefited from them, but also put in a hell of a ride. He was finished in the top 10 in the sprint race, which for the Yamaha is a hell of an achievement. And he also finished 7th overall on Sunday. Yes, taking advantage of the retirees in front of him, but also he had a gap to the likes of Luca Marini in that by about a second behind him the entire race, and deserved 7th place. For a long time he had Jack Miller with him in 8th and 9th. Jack Miller, of course, on the Pramac Yamaha, the Saturday one, and the Yamahas are just dogs. I always call it the stinky Yamaha battle. They're always at the back. But this time they were about 7th, 8th and 9th with Quartararo and Miller. I think Miller struggled with the rear tyre the last 5 laps as he usually does. He just can't get the hang of the wear of his rear tyre. He had the same issue on the Ducati, KTM, and now the Yamaha. So he dropped well out of the top 10 in the end. But he was with Fabio, so they were looking for like a 7th, 8th, maybe an 8th, 9th. But again, Fabio, who is not at Yamaha next year, hasn't been announced where he's going next year. So now's the time to put in those performances you need, if the contract hasn't already been signed and we're just waiting for the announcements. But it's a very strong 7th by Fabio Quartararo. If you keep in mind the stinkers, the Yamaha battles, the one who had the stinker was Rins and Toprak. Rins obviously been sacked for next year, won't be there. Toprak struggled with illness, also struggled just with the bike in general around the track and was a mile off the pace fighting. Cal Crutchlow for the last points position. I wish Crutchlow got it, because it was Crutchlow since he started coming in replacing Zarco had to get to grips after 4 or 5 years away from the sport, controlling these beasts of a MotoGP bike, which are not easy to ride at all, especially racing. And he was fighting Toprak for that last point, and I think they're having a good scrap. And then he dropped it, I think, at turn 3, a slow one for Crutchlow. It was gutting, because we all in the stream, we all root for Cal Crutchlow, because we used to call him Cal Crashlow, because it's funny. But the one who really was a shocker, and now, yes, he's still injured, and yes, he suffered a crash again on the Friday, similar place where Di Antonio binned it in the Sunday morning, is Maverick Vinales. Now, we've seen Maverick Vinales got, he fell out of Yamaha, left them, fell out of Aprilia, left them, and he's fallen out of KTM, he's going to leave them. My question is, will he be there come Silverstone, the next race in 4 weeks? Wouldn't surprise me if not, because he's publicly going at the team that they've broke the. He says they've offered him a factory contract, then took it away after it was signed, and he's saying he needs support, and actually, he's not getting any support, and he's getting just criticism every time. In the sprint race, he was about 10 seconds off the pace, off the one in front, and he was last anyway. And in the main race, he was running 6-7 seconds last, and then pulled into the pits for a few laps to go retired. Don't know why. He is carrying another injury, but Maverick Vinales to me is one of the most understood riders on the planet, but it's got to a point now where no one understands him. That's the problem. No one's able to understand him now. I don't know if it's a case of him not helping himself as well. Plus, whatever's happening in that team is not good for his side of things. Would not surprise me to see Maverick Vinales not a MotoGP rider come Silverstone. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Which is a shame how his career's ended out, because he did have, he is fast. Maverick Vinales is fast. He always has been. But if only he had the mental state could also support his speed, then it'd be a completely different rider. But they're two different spectrums what's happening with Vinales. And really that was it for the MotoGP weekend. A dull weekend, but a lot of things still happened. To me, the takeaway is I just love watching greatness happen, and that's what happened. The bad thing is now we have to focus on Formula 1, which is at Spa this weekend. Now, why I say Spa? Why I say it's a bad thing? Spa is my favourite track. I love Spa. I love every corner on Spa. I love the way the track goes downhill, uphill. I love how it cambers. It's, for me, the greatest track and the greatest corner being Eau Rouge. We're not doing the Radion argument. Oh, it's Radion. Go away. Eau Rouge. Cool. I think the greatest circuit is about to be humiliated, just like Silverstone was, but I feel like it's going to be worse than Silverstone. Now, if you know this podcast and you heard the recent episodes, I slated Silverstone pre-weekend, post-weekend. Hated every lap of that weekend. And I hate how Formula 1 looks now with these disgusting engines, these poor excuses for engines, right? F2 will look just as fast as Formula 1 this weekend. Now, I'm not disrespecting F2, but it should be nowhere near the levels of F1. That's just how it should be. But with the way F1 is, I can only see it being a dreadful, dreadful show. As I said, greatest circuit on Canada. The bravest corners in motorsport is what Spa is, especially in GT cars. Any vehicle, Spa is one of the bravest circuits. You need, as James Hunt said, big balls to drive Spa. This weekend it's going to be painful, because let's focus on the energy. We thought Silverstone was energy rich. You wait till Spa. They're going to come out of turn 1 La Source, and going from La Source down the hill, up Eau Rouge, Radion, Kemmel Straight. By the time they reach midway through the Kemmel Straight, they're going to be completely out of energy. And because Spa is really a power circuit. That's why a lot of the corners require power to be fast. I know, shocking concept, isn't it, for motorsports? You need power to be fast. They're going to have no energy. Then they've got another minute and a half to go around the rest of the circuit. Pouon's going to be a dreadful show. They're going to take Pouon flat, and F1 are going to do a social media post saying, flat out in Pouon, look at the statistics. Right, he's also going 55 miles an hour slower than what we're doing the previous year. Blanchemont's not going to be anything because they're going to come out the two right-handers after the middle sector, start the back straight for Blanchemont, and there's just going to be no power. So then, they have to lift off massively into bus stop and Nouvelle chicane after Kemble Straight to try and get any eke of energy there is. And it's going to be pathetic, and I'm not looking forward to it at all, as you can tell. Who's favourite for it? Mercedes are. Mercedes, McLaren. Well, Ferrari actually could do well. Ferrari, of course, they're coming off the Silverstone win. Would love to see a Ferrari win again. I think that's a solid F1 roundup right now. I'm not going to give it more publicity than it deserves because it's going to be embarrassing. We will do the track preview though, because I enjoy doing that. But just mark my words that F2 will look just as competitive and as fast as Formula 1 this weekend. And you got the driver. Max is saying that. Alonso is saying that. Even Ollie Behrman has said something similar, that it's just not going to feel good at all. That says quite a lot. I am a grumpy F1 fan at this moment. I accept that. I'm a grumpy Formula 1 fan. Got no qualms with that because my love and passion for the sport, and people have said some things in the comments which are fun. Again, I put some clips out for the podcast because I'm not an idiot. Not everyone listens to the podcast. I know. That's why I put certain clips out that I know people are going to grab onto and buy it from the podcast episodes themselves. I really love debates for Formula 1. I'm really trying to get people to debate with me about their views, especially this season. It's very difficult because a lot of people aren't using the brain cells they have. But anyway, let's go to the track preview because I am just going to get grumpier the more I talk about Formula 1 this weekend. Now, as I said, Spa is my favourite circuit. So let's driver mode now. Down the main straight, we have La Source coming. La Source, a 180 hairpin. It is tight. There are different lines to do it. You can even do the wide line and get the exit, or especially if you're racing someone, a lot of people like to really use the inside curb and use all the track on the exit from that big curb, which is now a gravel trap on the exit, so you can't go wide anymore. Before, you used to be able to get away with it. Not anymore. So you come La Source, I think in these F1 cars, will be third gear. Normally, most cars is second gear. But 180 hairpin back from La Source. And now you have, to me, one of the best sections of track. It's very simple, but it's so good, and it's the best corner in the world. You come out La Source, and you're looking downhill. But the thing is, because of how steep Air Rouge is when you go up, you're looking downhill the whole run between turn 1 and turn 2, between La Source and Air Rouge and Raidillon. When you're coming down the hill, the car back in the 80s, the car used to spark coming down the hill. You're now facing Air Rouge coming down the hill. All your eyes see is Air Rouge, but you can see the top, the peak of the hill at Air Rouge because you're going that much uphill soon. You come down Air Rouge. Air Rouge is the greatest corner on the planet. Everything you need. It's blind. You come up a little left kink, a little right kink, a little left kink at the top, which is Raidillon. Blind when you come up the hill. And it used to be a corner where you take it flat if you've got the biggest size on you. You know what I mean by that. And that's how Air Rouge should be. And I'll always look at Air Rouge like that. It's painful they can come out the pits now and take it flat instantly. But Air Rouge will always have that star power about the corner. Nowadays, this year, I'm not so sure. They're going to be running out of energy before they even reach Air Rouge. So we just ignore that and act like Air Rouge is still the best corner in the world. You come up Air Rouge, left kink, right kink, left kink, and radio on top of the hill. Blind, you're flat. Down the Kemmel Straight. I sat here and camped here actually in 2019, the Kemmel Straight, which was an experience. Down this Kemmel Straight, they used to go top speed here, 210, 250 mile an hour. This year, they might reach 180. You never really know. But you're facing now a long straight, then you've got Le Combe chicane coming up. When you come out of Air Rouge and Raidillon, you're on the right side of the circuit if you've done it well, right? You're on the right side of the circuit. You kind of naturally eke left down the straight because you know the next corner is a right-hander, and it's chicane. So you want to open up the entry to the first part of Le Combe, turn 5, as much as you can. Brake on the curb on the left, brake as hard as you can, but you want to throw it's not a slow chicane really, although it looks like it can be. It's not in a Formula 1 car. You want to hug the inside for turn 5, and then hug the inside for turn 6, which is the left-hander. Use the inside curb, use the inside curb. If you're carrying speed, you're probably going to run wide or come out wide at turn 6, the left-hander, because there's a curb on the exit, but then instantly you've got to throw the car left to go for turn 7. You need turn 7, right? If you miss the apex of turn 7, you're going to be in the gravel on the left. You're going to understeer in the marble and be wide completely. So you need to throw turn 6 to come on the right, throw all the way left for the entry of turn 7, Malmedy, clip the inside apex turn 7, which is a 90-degree right-hander. Now you're coming down the hill into turn 8. I can't pronounce it. Turn 9 is no name. Turn 8 is Bruxelles or something. I can't pronounce it. I can't speak that. Down the hill for turn 8, which is a long hairpin now. It's a very patient corner. You have to be. There's also different lines to it. You're on the left side of the circuit, braking downhill, so it's very easy to lock that front right tyre now. You can do the inside line, which is along the white line, again similar, along the white line, as close as you can to the inside curve, follow it round, follow it round, follow it round, and then this line does enable you to kind of come on the throttle early and drift out wide to the left, similar to what we now have to do at turn 5 and 6. You've drifted out wide to the exit of 8, then you have to throw the car all the way to the right hand side of that curb on the right hand side for the entry of turn 9, corner with no name, to then go all the way left and go as inside as you can on that apex of the left-hander of 90 degree left-hander, turn 9, no name, to use as much apex as you can for that, to almost straight line it. You want to open that entry as much as you can to straight line no name as much for the exit. You're going to use that curb on the exit as much as you can. You're on the right hand side of the circuit now. You're coming still down the hill, and now you're looking at Pouhon. Pouhon is a fantastic corner. Used to be, again, I fear what it's going to be like this weekend because of just the dreadful cars and dreadful engines. Not cars, dreadful engines, sorry. But you're coming down the hill. Pouhon's coming. All you see is Pouhon disappear in the apex. You can only see the apex and no more as you're turning in. You're going to be as far right as you can because you're going to carry some speed now into Pouhon. You're going to be as close as you can to this right-hand curb when you turn in. Maybe down 1 or 2 gears. A blip off the throttle, and then you're going to come back on yourself. If you see the video, it's a long corner like this, and you come back up, right? When you turn into Pouhon, your front left needs to be close to that curb. You don't want to touch the curb on the inside of Pouhon because you'll unsettle the entire car, and you'll completely, high chance you'll end up in the gravel trap and the wall or the exit. But you want to be as close as you can to the inside apex. You're carrying speed now. 100 in the good old days, 6th gear, you're carrying speed. You're back on the throttle. Turn 11 is still Pouhon, doesn't count as a corner if you've got the first part of Pouhon correct. You're now drifting as far right as you can for turn 11 as you'll continue to go around this long left-hander, back up the hill, your right-hand side of the circuit. You swing the car to the left. You've got a bit of a breathing period now between 11 and 12 while you bring the car from the right side of the circuit to the left side of the circuit. Brake, Formula 1 cars, I said, sorry. Brake at the entry of this curb on the left. As soon as you hit the curb, you hit the brakes. Turn 12 and 13, left Fagney. Turn 12. Again, we've got a little chicane coming up which carries speed. It's not a slow one. You go down maybe 2 more gears from 6th or 7th, so you can take it in 4th gear or 5th gear in these Formula 1 cars probably. Again, don't get the inside curb, but you want to have your front right on that white line on the inside because it will guide the car around. Again, you've opened up the entry if you've done it right, so you're guiding the car around this right-hander, kind of 90 degree right-hander below turn 12. Again, right-hand side of the circuit, throw it to the left-hand side. Now you want your front left as close as you can to that white line on the left, inside of 13 to complete the chicane. You're carrying the speed for 5th gear, and because the speed you're carrying, if you've opened them up correctly, you can use all the exit out of 13 on that curb. And again, you're on the right-hand side of the circuit. Now you come up to campus in turn 14, right-hand side of the circuit, throw it to the left side of the circuit. You've got about a second or two breathing period before you now throw it in 3rd or 4th gear for the right-hander of campus, 90 degree. This is a very important corner purely because you need to open that one up massively. Because of the way you don't want to use as much curb on the exit because 1, you'll get beached on the curb, and 2, the gravel trap is right next to the curb. But also you need to get as wide as you can on the exit of 14 to line up 15. 15 is a long right-hander. It's tighter on entry as it is apex. But if you get the entry right for 15 and you're on the left side of the circuit, you've opened up the entry as much as you can. Getting that right, you can keep it flat. And Formula 1 cars, you keep it flat anyway. GT cars are a bit more tricky too. Get the entry right, you can just stay on the left-hand side. Now you come out, you cut back to the right-hand side of the track of 15. Again, white line, you want to be as close as you can to the inside. If you've got that flat, you then just let the car guide out to the left, which is the exit for 15, basically the other side of the circuit. Let it guide out to the left where you're still flat, and now you're coming down the straight. If you've got 14 and 15 right, you carry this speed onto the straight to Blanchimont. Mess up 14 and 15, you completely messed up your entry speed and your exit speed for the run to Blanchimont. And the whole time you're going to reach between 15 and 18 of the bus stop chicane, you're going to see that delta drop and drop and drop because you haven't got the momentum. And you need momentum for this straight line coming up. 16 doesn't count. It's a little kink left before Blanchimont. Blanchimont now on turn 17 used to be I love this corner. Not, again, similar to Pouhon, not much there was anymore in these cars because there's so much grip and downforce. But you know, back in the day, you used to take Blanchimont flat if you had something about you. Again, right hand side of the circuit as much as you can. A lot of drivers like to go over the white line a little bit with their right hand side tyres, but just because it opens up Blanchimont. Blanchimont now, easy flat left hander, boom, gone full gear, not even a hint of a lift. Your front tyres or front right hand side tyres will be on the exit curb. You're now looking at the bus stop chicane coming down. You've got about 4 or 5 seconds before bus stop arrives. Maybe more in these engines because you're just going to hear the revs drop. This is what is painful. You might hear cars drop a gear in Blanchimont this year to get to kind of save energy, which is just going to, if that happened, it's going to be horrific to see and hear, and everything about it will be horrific. But anyway, in the good old days, you're coming into chicane now. You've carried the speed all the way from 15 up the straight through Blanchimont. Bus stop chicane, you're on the left hand side of the circuit. Brake hard for the bus stop chicane because it's a chicane that kind of come back themselves a little bit both times. The entry for turn 18, the first part of the bus stop, you're braking hard on the left side of the circuit. It's more than a 90 degrees, it's like 100 degrees. So you're going to get the entry. If you can clip this inside curb, which you want to, it's a wide curb, you can put your front right tyre on it, and there's a sausage curb on the inside which you don't want to hit. So if you can get that inside curve when you throw it right, second gear, third gear, it will guide the car round. Because what you want is you want to be on the right hand side of the circuit when the first part of the bus stop chicane, because you want to open up as much. The second part's tighter for the bus stop as it goes back onto the main straight. Because of how tight it is, you need to be on the right hand side of the circuit when you turn in to the left part of bus stop chicane. Otherwise, you've messed up your whole momentum and run down the main straight into the source. Again, you can kind of clip the front left on that curb, but I don't think many drivers do, because they want to focus on using that exit curb. So when you come back on the throttle of the second part bus stop chicane, it's a tighter M shape. You're waiting for the traction to come on the rear tyres, you guide it round, and then you have to be patient, use this exit curve for momentum to put your tyres on it, then you can floor it down the source, and that's a lap of Spa. The greatest circuit on the calendar, the greatest circuit in the world, not just on the calendar. And sadly, I think just like Silverstone will be ruined this weekend, but I hope I am very wrong. I don't think I was wrong about Silverstone, I don't think I'm going to be wrong about Spa, but that is a lap of the greatest circuit in the world. And that's actually all I'm going to do with the Formula 1 preview, because I'm not looking forward to it. There's nothing about Formula 1 I actually want to talk about in terms of the race weekend. I said a little bit about Ferrari, Mercedes will be favourites. Grand. Let's just stick with that. Red Bull, if I was Red Bull, actually, I'd be concerned by their rear wing, because if that happens again to Verstappen or Hadjar, if that happens again, because the Macarena wing is now being looked at for safety concerns. So I imagine they're going to change it, Red Bull, because it hasn't worked. It's worked for pace, but not for safety, because it's put Max Verstappen in the gravel twice now in 2 weekends. If that rear wing goes, and because there's 5 straight line modes now this weekend between La Source and Eau Rouge, between Eau Rouge and Le Combe, the Kemmel Straight, the run between 14-15 and Blanchimont, and I think Blanchimont to the bus stop and the main straight. If that rear wing does not shut correctly, and the time isn't correct when it does shut for the Red Bull, and it goes up Rouge, you've got a massive shunt coming, and that's going to be a painful one and not a good look. Le Combe, you might be able to get away with, but it's going to bump up over the grass and go to the other side of the circuit, which can be painful. If that doesn't shut for Blanchimont, you've got a big shunt coming at Blanchimont. If you remember Luciano Berti's crash at Blanchimont went underneath the tyre barrier, they'll have a lot to answer for if it happens again, and Verstappen will be in a bit of pain if this happens again. But as we said, Spa is this weekend. MotoGP now approaching summer break, which F1 will have in a couple race time. Is it after Spa? No, we've got Spa in Hungary, and then it's the F1 summer break. Thank the Lord. Thank you everyone for listening to this podcast episode again of Apex to Apex. We will be live on Twitch, of course, for Spa, Apex to Apex Pod. Make sure you are following, subscribed on that as well. We also are live in the week for conversations, for live sim racing, which is very fun. I get quite fun clips on that from the social media pages again. On the Instagram page, which is Apex to Apex Instagram, make sure you follow that. You can see at the bottom of the screen. On the Spotify is also Apex to Apex Podcast. Same as the YouTube, Apex to Apex Podcast. Make sure you follow all of those accounts. One quick announcement is I am going to do a separate Apex to Apex account, which is going to be a gaming channel. Nothing to do with motorsport, but because I enjoy streaming a lot, it's going to be pure games. Nothing to do with motorsport. Completely different content, completely different audience. If that's something that you want to be involved in and entertained by, and interested in that gaming world anyway, I will make those channels very soon this week with the Apex to Apex Gaming. That'll be the handles for both. If you want to follow, subscribe to them, please do. I'll be on Twitch as well and Instagram. But the motorsport stuff is going to stay in this project, Apex to Apex Podcast, Apex to Apex Pod. Make sure you follow, subscribe to all the handles, and we will see you this week for the Spa Grand Prix, and in the week for whatever stream we're doing. Probably sim racing, maybe also a chat. Thank you for listening again, and I'll see you later on in the week. And I will leave you, of course, as always, with the punchline of this podcast, which is the race is just a punctuation. Thank you so much.